Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Just Saying Football with Jack and Sean. I'm your host, Sean Gann, alongside my partner, Jack Nicholas. We're here to bring you news, notes, weekly updates, and game analysis of your favorite teams from around the league. Another chance, go check out our website, justsayingfootball.com. Follow us on Instagram at JustSaying, for article and video updates. And don't forget to get us in your ear on Spotify at Just Saying Football, as well as the Discord at Just Saying Football, which has all of our bets, which have been doing pretty well as of late. So check it out, buddy. It's Christmas week, it's the holiday week, it's Hanukkah, it's football on Christmas Day, it's CFB playoffs, a lot's going on right now. How are you feeling?
Yeah, this is a stacked weekend for football right now. We're going to probably get a full look at the NFL playoff picture after this weekend. Like you said, fantasy championships coming down to it, college football playoffs. We got a big deal with the Oregon-Ohio State for our big bet. And now we have so much going on, so many news and notes. We got a bunch of teams vying for the number one pick. But yeah, there's some crazy news coming off last week. Last week was just one of those weeks that you saw the first half and you couldn't believe that those weren't the full game scores.
Yep, it was a little bit ridiculous. Some of those games a little bit sad for others, and for fantasy reasons or just overall. Let's get into some of our news and notes. So you just mentioned a little bit of the draft. New York Giants currently hold the number one draft pick going into 2025. Who do you want them to draft if you could pick right now?
I know it's going to look biased because I'm wearing the U Miami sweatshirt, and they are playing in the Pop-Tarts Bowl this weekend versus Iowa State. But I will say I want to see Cam Ward after this weekend, and if he has a good game there, he would be my front runner for who I would want the Giants to draft. I like Shedeur Sanders, but I think Cam Ward gives you a little bit more. But yeah, he's gonna be my top pick. I wouldn't mind a little Travis Hunter in there though. Give the Giants somebody next to Malik Neighbors.
Yep, you never know. All right, move this right along. Ravens locked in their playoff spot with their win over the Steelers last week. Both teams, though, are still fighting to win the AFC North and get a home playoff game. So that's something to keep in mind. They have some key games coming up. We'll get into that later. Packers have also locked in a playoff spot with their win over the Saints. That's 3 NFC North teams in the playoffs. Sorry, Bears fans. Some injury news. Jalen Hurts went down early with a concussion. That is something to watch as they take on the Cowboys with their loss to Washington. They would need the Vikings and the Lions to win this week for them to still be the number one seed in the NFC. So they're not out of it, but statistically they need a lot to go in their favor, including a win with potentially no Jalen Hurts. Moving this along, Cowboys, Cardinals, 49ers have all been officially eliminated from the playoffs. And some of the most sad news of the entire week, Tank Dell dislocated his kneecap and tore his ACL. It's looking more than likely that he's going to be out for sure for the rest of the season and potentially a good chunk of next season as well. In response to that injury, the Texans did go out and just signed newly released Deontay Johnson from the Ravens. So that is something to just also keep in mind. Some sad news, but they do get a playmaker back in return. Now, moving this into our games, we have Christmas Day, which is going to be on Netflix, oddly enough. There's a huge lineup. Get ready for it of people coming on for it. Kansas City Chiefs making their way to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. Chiefs are favored in this one by -3 with an over-under here of 43.5. Chiefs got the big one over the Texans, and surprise, surprise, Mahomes' ankle didn't look like it was that hurt. What are your thoughts going into this one?
Yeah, I didn't think it looked bad at all. He was running kind of all around last game, getting everybody involved. We saw kind of Marquise Brown have his best game of the year. Kansas City, they're on the road here. I've been saying a lot about how much I like Tomlin on the road at home as a dog. But this week, it's got me a little shaky. The Chiefs, they just keep winning these kind of low-scoring games. I do see this as a low-scoring game. I would take the under at 43.5 on this. I think it's short week, but there are a few things I like. I like Mahomes rushing 25, and I like Xavier Worthy over 3.5. If KC wins this game, they clinch the number one seed. So I do believe that they can get the win this weekend. If Buffalo, I don't know if Buffalo is going to lose, but if Buffalo loses, KC wins. KC is number one seed.
So the Steelers have a lot going into this game as well. They play the Bengals at home next week. They're tied with the Ravens in every category, including the divisional game. So this game right now, it's like a win, then you got to win in the division, and then you're home. You're home, you get to host a playoff game. That's awesome. I'm locking in the Steelers for this one. I think this defense is going to show up. They're going to be in Pittsburgh. It's going to be Christmas Day. You know the fans are going to be there. The place is going to be electric. Yeah. I think this is going to be a great bounce-back game for Russell Wilson, who had a rough outing last week. We saw the interception. The turnovers were there. He just didn't look as comfortable as we had seen all season against a Ravens defense that's very beatable and very passable on. So I expect them to kind of bounce back, have a good game overall, and get back on track. 'Cause this is a playoff team, and they have high hopes to go deep in the playoffs, considering that they started with Justin Fields, made the switch to Russell Wilson, and looking at where they are now. But I'm going with the Steelers at home for sure. Moving this right along, another AFC North team here, Baltimore Ravens, making their way to Houston to take on the Texans. Baltimore's favored this one by -5.5 with an over/under here of 46.5. Now again, no Tank Dell in this one. Most likely no Deontay Johnson in this one as well. He's probably just got signed because he just got signed. It's going to take some time to get readjusted into another new offense this season. But what are your thoughts going into this one? Can the Texans get a win at home?
Yeah, I think that this is going to be a tough one. They're definitely going to have to adjust to this post-Tank Dell part of the season, going into a crucial point here. Tough matchup to have late in the season with the Ravens on the road playing the way they have. I like the Ravens at 5.5. I think they could win this game by more than a touchdown, so feeling confident in that. Derrick Henry, I think he could run for 100 yards in this. I think it's a huge question on can C.J. Stroud show again what he did at the end of the game last week where he's targeting Mixon and Schultz and getting other people involved because it can't all just be about Nico Collins if you want to beat the Ravens. So I really like the Ravens this week.
Yeah, I'm also liking the Ravens. The interior offensive line of the Texans has just been struggling. That's been their weakness. Injuries early on in the season kind of killed them in there. And it's just been showing up and showing out. Now you factor in that they're going to be limited with their pass catchers. It just doesn't bode well. This is a very solid, Ravens team that's going to be able to, I think, to exploit this and make their passing defense look a little bit better than it is. A lot of targets going to Nico Collins. A lot of targets, going to Dalton Schultz. All these guys got to start getting involved. But I do think Derrick Henry, what they're going to be able to do defensively on the interior side of the ball, it's just going to be enough for the Ravens to get a win. Moving this into our Thursday night football game, Seattle Seahawks making their way to Chicago to take on the Bears. Seattle's favored this one by -3.5 with an over-under here of 43.5. Now, honestly, Bears, it's been brutal. They let up 20 points in 5 minutes into the second quarter. All right, if you turned into that game or if you're a Bears fan, you're watching that being like, what are we doing?
Yeah, they were not doing what they needed to do. As you mentioned, all other three teams besides the Bears have made the playoffs in the NFC North. We don't know where they're going to be seated. We know they're all going to be in there. The Seahawks are fighting right now against the Rams. The Seahawks are trying to just take some kind of lead here with 2 weeks left on the Rams in the NFC West. I think this is a winnable matchup on the road for them. They can play in cold weather. And Geno Smith and Caleb Williams both threw over 300 yards last week. So just something to note. I think this is going to be a big game for fantasy managers, for people looking at these picks. I like Seattle, and I like him 3.5.
Yep, I'm also going to take in Seattle. I just don't think that this is the season that the Bears expected or wanted early on in the preseason, especially, obviously. But
Yeah.
it's a rookie season. There's a lot to build on. A lot of pieces you still need to figure out right now. Obviously, the head coach changing her offensive coordinator in the middle of the season. These all things, they play a factor in a player's development. So let's take a lot of what's happening with this team with a grain of salt. I do think there's a brighter future for them coming onto the horizons. But I do think this is the Seahawks game. Seahawks are still alive in this playoff race. They play the Rams next week, right? So you got to win this week, and then you got to go to LA and you got to take on the Rams. So again, playoff times, these teams have to win these games. These games became must-win. This is a Bears team that at this point just wants to ruin someone's playoff, and the Seahawks are the perfect team to do that. They still put up some points here and there. They had some big plays against the Lions. Lions' offense was just too much. I do think this is a game where they can maybe slow it down a little bit, but the Seahawks got to get the win here. All right, Saturday games. There are games almost every day of the week this week. It's awesome. I love it. Los Angeles Chargers make their way to New England to take on the Patriots. Chargers are favored this one by -4 with an over-under here of 42. Now, honestly, the Patriots, if you watch that first half of the game, you were like, oh my God, are they about to win in Buffalo? And then by the end of the game, you were like, oh, no.
Yeah.
Can they get the win against a good Chargers team?
I don't think so. We saw what we always talk about, close division games, and when you see Drake May start up 14-0 against the Bills, you're like, oh, yeah, and there's some of the flashes that we've been looking for from him, but not enough. The Chargers, they've been getting things done. I think Gus Edwards is going to have a big week. We've seen some low yardage, but he had 2 touchdowns last week. The Chargers beating the Broncos was kind of a shock to both of us. So I think that this one, they have a winnable game. They're in the playoffs now, so they're just trying to get a higher seed. I think that they can't really take their foot off the gas right now. But another big week for Ladd McConkey for sure.
Yeah, I'm locking in the Chargers as well. This offense is playing great. They had a huge comeback against the Broncos last week. Their defense looks electric. We all had always talked about for years how good they have with these playmakers, and Derwin James, and you got Joey Bosa, and you got Khalil Mack, who's still amazing, and they're finally all piecing it together with Harbaugh. So I'm excited to see where they go. I think both these teams right now, especially the Patriots, are missing a wide receiver, a guy that Drake May can really throw back to consistently. Right now, Hunter Henry stepped into that role, and that's great. I think the Chargers are going to get a win in this one. Moving this right along, Denver Broncos making their way to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. Bengals are favored this one by -3 with an over-under here of 50. Now the Bengals, percentage is low. Percentage is low to make the playoffs, but there is a way, and it starts with a win against the Broncos, who also are fighting for a playoff spot at 9-6. So, how can the Bengals win this game against a pretty good Broncos defense?
Yeah, they need to get, T. Higgins to have another big game like he had last week. They are 7-8 right now, so going to 500 would be huge going into the last week. Going in the playoffs 9-8, like you said, would be ideal. A huge thing here. They got to beat Denver. Denver's got to lose. I think that there's a lot of pressure for Denver on the road here. Cincinnati favored. The over-under is 50, one of the higher ones of the weekend. These are two teams that are going to have all their starters, and they're going to have everybody going 100%. So, give me the over on that, too, because the defenses aren't really that great, especially for Cincinnati. So, yeah, they got to get T. Higgins involved. They got to get Chase Brown going because Pat Surtain versus Jamar Chase is going to be a hell of a matchup.
Yeah, if somehow this Bengals team makes the playoffs, Joe Burrow should win the MVP. First in yards, first in touchdowns, third in QBR, sixth in completion percentage. He is having an MVP-like season. If it wasn't for the fact that they are not looking like they're going to make the playoffs, I think we'd be talking about Joe Burrow very differently, and everybody has mentioned it, and they're absolutely right. He's just been playing a great season. Jamar Chase is most likely to win the Triple Crown, barring any insane CeeDee Lamb, 13-catch game or something like that puts him right up there, and somebody having a 265 Jamar Chase-esque game later on in the season, like Justin Jefferson, which I don't think is going to happen. So this team is playing great. When T. Higgins is involved, this team is great. I think they're going to get the win. They're at home. They're playing for this playoff spot. They're absolutely electric. I'm locking in the Bengals. I'm sorry, Broncos. I like everything Bo Nix is doing, but I just don't know if this is going to be your season, as it turns out.
Yeah.
Moving this into our next game, NFC West showdown. Arizona Cardinals making their way to Los Angeles to take on the Rams. Rams are favored this one by -6.5, with the over-under here of 40.5. And I'm locking in the Rams. I don't even think it's a question for this one with me. James Conner with the injury last week that just completely sucked the life out of this Cardinals team. They couldn't do as much offensively against the Panthers. You could see they were visibly upset in a must-win game. I just think this is the Rams season. They're going to win the NFC West, and they're going to host a playoff game.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of all Rams. This is just kind of I'm having that feeling I had when, I wanted them to win the NFC a couple of years ago, where they have a good path hosting the playoff. They can match up well against almost any team with their offense. Their defense has really come together the last few weeks, and Arizona has just fallen apart. So easy one for me as well. Rams, I think they just have a lot more to play for than the Cardinals this week.
Yep, I couldn't agree with you more. All right, moving this into our Sunday games now, finally on Sunday. Indianapolis Colts making their way to New York to take on the Giants. Colts are favored in this one by -7.5 with an over-under here of 40.5. So they clearly think this is going to be a blowout by the Colts. How are you feeling this one? The Colts team, they had to fend off a Titans team late in the game.
Yeah, they let up a huge comeback. I was saying something to you, before the show. Anthony Richardson only 7 for 11 last week because Jonathan Taylor is doing all the work. I think that the Giants are, a good defense still, but they obviously are at the point here where they're gunning for that number 1 pick. I think that they're going to try to play, not try to get anybody hurt. But Jonathan Taylor, this is going to be a big week. The Colts defense definitely, like you said, giving up that comeback. They need a nice little bounce back week, and I think they get it here. But it would be funny to me if Anthony Richardson was the one who lost to the Giants and lost the Giants the number 1 pick.
It feels like it's one of those games where it's like New York's going to play themselves, and all of a sudden we're going to be sitting here at the end of the season playoffs being like, man, how did the Giants go from the number 1 pick in Week 17 to the number 8 pick all of a sudden?
I was just thinking 8 in my head.
And it's one of those things where it's like, you don't want to say tank, right? Because of course you want to win games, but with the way that the Giants season's gone, with fans saying like, Mara, fix it, fire everybody, all these things, Dable probably more than likely looking like he's on his way out at the end of the season is my guess. Shun, I think, still has a chance to maybe survive one more year. We'll see, and we'll talk about that later on
Yeah.
as the postseason gets there. But at this point, like, just play for that number one pick. There's a lot of studs in this upcoming draft. There's a lot of quarterbacks. There's a lot of playmakers. There's going to be teams, including the Raiders and the Saints, that might want to move up in this draft to get their guy. You might be able to trade this number one pick for a slew of picks and get your guy later on. So I think play this smart. Play this game. See how the day is going, but let's play for that number one overall pick. I'm taking the Colts. It's not going to be pretty, and I can't see them at 7.5. Honestly, I just can't. But moving this along into an AFC East showdown, New York Jets making their way to Buffalo to take on the Bills. Bills are favored this by -9.5, and over under here at 46.5. And I'm absolutely taking the Bills. This is a bounce back game for this team. They just played so terrible against the Patriots. Josh Allen. This is like, let's get back on that MVP track. Let's get back to my 3 touchdowns rushing, 3 touchdowns passing kind of game. Because this Jets team is just deflated. That is like the only way to describe them. They're just a sad, deflated football every single week. And only scoring 9 points against the Rams was like, what are we doing? What are you guys doing?
Yeah, and they kind of kept the Rams low in that game. So it's like, oh, could they do that to the Bills? I think not. I think that Josh Allen is hearing the noise this week after not really being as productive as he should have been in that Patriots game, and trying to go get this number one seed. They obviously got the win, but very unexpected there, as they were 14-point favorites. But now they're almost double digit favorites again, 9.5. Bill is easy. I think James Cook has a fantastic day in this one. I think Khalil Shakir really needs to have a bounce back. Last week, you kept him over 5 catches almost every game. Last week, I believe he had 2. So I'm expecting a big game, bounce back from Khalil Shakir this week.
Yep, couldn't agree with you more. All right, let's move this right along. Not so attractive game. Tennessee Titans making their way to Jacksonville to take on the Jags. Jags favored this one by -1 with the over-under here at 41. I can't imagine. There's nobody in here that's betting on this game or has too many fantasy players in this game. So, what are your thoughts? Let's get through this one.
Yeah, I'll take the Jags at home. I think that they kind of messed themselves up. Like we were talking about the draft order. They're favored for some reason, so I'll take them. And Brian Thomas, you got to give a shout out to him. First rookie to 1,000, but not much more for me to shout out for these teams.
Yeah, I'll just take the Titans. They had that late game comeback. We haven't disagreed on a game yet, I believe. So let's get one in there. That's different.
Yeah.
I think that the Titans can surprise at times. When we've seen with Calvin Ridley making that one touchdown here and there. All right, let's keep this moving along. We're getting to our 4 o'clock games because this game got flexed because it's going to be a great one. It's the NFC North. It's the Green Bay Packers making their way to Minnesota to take on the Vikings. Vikings are favored this one by -1.5 in some places, -1 in others. Nobody seems to know. The money line's changing. Over-under here of 48.5. I think you can smash that over for sure for both these offenses. What are your thoughts going into this one? Can we control our fate, my friend? You think we can get the win?
I mean, it is a tough time to want to go against the Vikings and pick against them, and I want to bet with them with all my heart and put it, just be able to say, oh wow, this is the team I'm going to pick to get it right. But I'll tell you, the Packers, I'm going to take them on the road. Division game, not a lot of travel. I think the last game, one possession. I think that last week even we've seen Minnesota get into this close game with Seattle. Packers coming off kind of a short week with Monday Night Football, but still able to get it done. They're going to play in the Dome after playing in the snow last week. Josh Jacobs, had a great game, had 19 fantasy points first half. Lost my championship hopes by 0.34 because he didn't play in the second half. But you can't hate a guy for just absolutely killing it. I'll let you get on the Viking side of this, but after Christian Watson's injury, I think that we are going to start seeing Jaden Reed get back to where he was at the beginning of the season.
If ever there's a team to pass on, it is the Vikings. Despite being a pretty good defense, we do bleed a lot of passing yards. We're in the bottom 10 in that regard, along with teams like the Lions and the Ravens, some of the playoff teams out there. And I think what we saw the first time this team met was just like, Jordan Love's coming back from injury. We're up early on them, 28-0 all of a sudden, but still it came down to the wire in that game. We had like 4 interceptions, and it came down, I think, to a Cam Bynum interception to steal the game, or a Griffin interception to steal the game. And you're at home, and I just said it. You control your fate right now. The Vikings have a path to the number one seed in the NFC, and that's just winning. All you have to do is win your last two games. The sucky part is that it's against the Packers at home, and it's against the Lions on the road. So it's easier said than done. I'm taking the Vikings. That's my squad. It was a little bit nervous last week. I'm listening to Paul Allen in the car as I'm driving to pick up my girlfriend, and I'm like, oh my god. Paul's like, this is BS. Where's the penalty here? And I'm like, I don't even know what we're talking about, Paul, but I'm with you. I'm taking them in this one, but I am nervous. This is not going to be, the most exciting, fun game for me as a Viking fan. I will be on my seat, and you know for a fact that everybody with me watching this game is going to be hearing me being like, it's over, and everybody's going to be like, Sean, it's one drive, and I'm going to be like, it's over, the game is done, and everyone's going to be like, it's the first quarter, so it's going to be one of those games for me. But let's keep this moving along. Las Vegas Raiders making their way to New Orleans to take on the Saints. Saints for this one -1 with an over-under here of 39. I mean, Saints, no points last week. Can they get 3 points at least?
I think they have to. This is a low over-under 39 points. I'm going to take Vegas just to oppose you, but man, they really saved all of these. I know we talk about the bad matchups that they put out there sometimes, but this week is just a tough one. You got to pick your spots real carefully. I'll take Las Vegas on the road. They're playing in the Dome, not a lot of weather issues, and the Saints, they just have not gotten it figured out yet.
Yeah, I'll go with the Saints. I'm hoping that they can just kind of figure out what's going on with this at the moment, but it's not pretty. Not even this defense, which is weird. Moving this right along, NFC South showdown. Pretty big one, actually. Carolina Panthers making their way to Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers. Bucs are over this one by -8 with an over-under here of 49.5. Now you're probably like, how is this a big game? They're playing the Panthers. Well, the reason why is because they had the division. We've been talking about this every single week with the Bucs and the Falcons. But the Bucs had the division. Because they lost it, the Falcons took over with their win despite the same record. Why? Because the Falcons had the best record in the division.
Yeah.
The divisional games are so important. So now you got to win, Tampa Bay. You got to win out, all right? That's the only way, and you need the Falcons to lose at some point, which is a lot harder than you think. So I'm locking in Tampa Bay. They should win this game. They should have won the game against Dallas. That fumble was a little bit weird, but that's football. Any given Sunday, right? So it happens, but the Bucs should win this one. I'm locking them in. Let's see if Mike Evans can get to 1,000 yards.
Yeah, I'll take the Bucs. Evans needs one more to get to 10. He's 182 away from 1,000. He's got to have some big ones. I think that, like you mentioned with Atlanta, they got a tough matchup that we're going to get into in a little bit. But the Bucs at home versus the Panthers, it's a dangerous trap. Bryce Young getting 2 rushing touchdowns. You see him getting to a little field. Chuba Hubbard out there. I think Tampa Bay has done a good job looking to their other weapons, McMillan. But I hope Cade Otton plays for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week. I do not like 8 for Tampa. I think that Carolina is going to keep this game close.
I agree. I would stay away from that spread for sure. All right, next one. Miami Dolphins make their way to Cleveland to take on the Browns. Dolphins are favored this one -6.5. Over under here of 39.5. I don't really get why the Browns benched Winston. I know he had the 3 turnovers, but the DTR game last week was brutal despite the defense keeping them in there. There were some brutal flags towards the end of the game there. DTR ran in for the touchdown, but then the flag negated it, and then it just kind of imploded on themselves that drive. So a little bit weird to me. I'm going to take the Dolphins. I just think that they're the better team. The question for you, is this Myles Garrett's last season in Cleveland, do you think?
It could be. He just became the 4th fastest guy to 100 sacks, and he tied Bruce Smith, which a lot of people, they always think that Reggie White's the sack leader, but Bruce Smith is the sack leader for the NFL. And, you got Myles Garrett playing at that level. You think he wants to play for a contender and not really go through another rebuild. He's kind of seen a couple passing by already. Miami, there's not a lot of offenses right now that are playing with the pace Miami's playing to. They're kind of back to that, thing we saw last year. So I like Miami here on the road. They even themselves up at 8-8, and they keep themselves in the AFC playoff race, which is actually more open than you'd think it'd be.
Yep, I couldn't agree with you more. Let's keep this moving along. So we have an NFC East showdown. When the Dallas Cowboys make their way to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. Eagles are favored in this one by -9.5 and over under here 42.5. And we still don't know any news on Jalen Hurts at the moment. So 50-50 on whether or not he's playing. That's just something to keep in mind. Kenny Pickett came in, did throw a few touchdowns, but obviously didn't have the same impact that Jalen Hurts has on this team. What are your thoughts going into this one? It's a great Philadelphia Eagles defense going up against Cooper Rush.
Yeah, I think that Cooper definitely has his, he's got a lot of work cut out for him this week. We saw Zeke getting carries on the goal line. We're wondering what's happening to Rico Dowell, who's been having a couple of good weeks. At the end of the day, I think this is a great matchup for Saquon, who is on his way right now to try to race after Eric Dickerson's record, which is one of the more unachievable ones. So you got to keep an eye out for that this week. I believe he needs to get over at least 130 in the next 2 games. So watch out for that. I will say Kenny Pickett looked really comfortable throwing to A.J. Brown, so look out for A.J. Brown to have a good week this week. And I would take the Eagles by 10, no matter what the quarterback situation is.
All right. Well, I'll also take the Eagles in this one. I just think it's that defense is so good compared to what the Cowboys offense can do, and that's what becomes really crucial for me when I'm looking at this and what they're able to do. I do think they can move the ball well enough, and as long as you have Saquon, you're handing the ball off, I think you're going to be fine. But I do think this defense can get the win. Moving this right along, Atlanta Falcons making their way to Washington to take on the Commanders. This is Sunday Night Football now. Washington's favored this one by -4 with an over-under here of 47. Now, some rumors out there, Kirk Cousins might retire at the end of the season, but it also seems like he's for sure going to be released before March 15th when his bonus comes in, which means it's the Michael Penix Jr. show for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and that's why you get a guy in the top 10. I remember being at the draft this year wondering how they made that pick. And, just thinking, not the draft, but the draft party, the Giants. And I think, we were watching, Penix go up, and we were like, everyone's asking the same question. I already signed Kirk Cousins. Well, you get 200 yards and an interception out of Penix last week, get the rookie, rookie rust off himself against an easy opponent. But now he's got kind of a tough matchup here. This is not really where you'd want to put him in. Sunday Night Football, primetime, people are going to get to see a lefty quarterback. Everyone loves a lefty quarterback. And, like you mentioned with the Bucs and Atlanta are right here with each other. So both of them, they're hoping that one of the other ones loses. I think that, the Bucs have a good matchup with Carolina, and I think that the Falcons have a bad matchup with the Commanders. So I'm going to take the Commanders here. Bob for Jaden Daniels, I believe, could break the rookie rushing record for QBs. So I think that's an awesome thing. Brian Robinson, 2 fumbles last week. You're going to have to hope he doesn't do that this week.
Yeah, absolutely. The Washington just became the second team to have 5 turnovers and still win the game, which is the Lions that did it this season as well. I agree with you. I just think that this was, I think the Falcons' logic was we can run the ball pretty well last week, and so we'll be able to get the win, and we could probably win against Washington, which is a little surprised me considering how well Washington has played, and everything last week I think showed how good they are. The Falcons are lucky. They play the Panthers at the end of the season. They do have the tiebreaker at the moment over Tampa Bay, but Tampa Bay wins, you lose, all of a sudden, it's back to that same situation. So it's an interesting time of why you pick to start your quarterback. It is late in the season. He had a lot of time to learn all these things. Kirk Cousins wasn't playing well. I totally get it. I'm just taking the Commanders. I think everything last week showed them how good this team can be, how good of a head coach Dan Quinn is, how good of a quarterback Jaden Daniels is. They just did everything right despite all the turnovers against the divisional opponent. I know, Jalen Hurts got injured, but still, that's a huge win regardless of the injury that happened for this rookie quarterback and this team as they're just starting in kind of like this new era in the post-Dan Snyder world that's supposed to be a little bit greener, and it already looks to be that way. But I'm locking Washington. Moving this right along, NFC Championship rematch from last year. Detroit Lions make their way to San Francisco to take on the 49ers. Lions Ravens by -3.5 with an over-under here of 51. Now, the Lions got the big win against the Bears. 49ers suffered a terrible loss to the Dolphins. Is there a chance that the 49ers can shock the world and get the win against the Lions?
I don't think so. I think Detroit is going for blood. If you look at a 13-2 team at face value, you'd be like, why are they playing so hard? It's because of the Packers and Vikings also being 12 and 13 win teams. You got to have this opportunity to win. I think the Niners are down bad. We've seen the Lions play well on travel games this year, so I think this is a good one. And the Niners are out of the playoff contention. Brock Purdy's just trying to up his contract value at this point, trying to make that money. But I think we saw Gibbs as the primary back last week, and I didn't really know what to make of that, and you can see that they shifted to Laporta and Williams. But that's what makes them so dangerous. They can do trick plays. They can beat you in any way. And I don't think the Niners really are ready to play those games at 6-9.
Yeah, I don't think so either at the moment. I think they're kind of outside looking in, like you mentioned. Purdy's definitely going to play for that contract. They're also playing just for some respect on themselves, that kind of stuff. They know this is a big game. They can kind of maybe shake up the NFC a little bit towards the end. They ruined the Super Bowl chances last year. Now we get to ruin your playoffs this year. It's sort of like a nice little FU to them. So I do think that this is not a game that the Lions will just sit back and go on cruise control whatsoever. I still expect to be full pedal to the metal, taking these caps off, and that's what the 49ers know because they saw it last year firsthand when all of a sudden they were down 17-0 at halftime. So, you got to start doing these things. Jameson Williams had a big game. I think Montgomery was missing the essence for me, especially watching the few drives where it took 3 or 4 chances for them to get in to the end zone 3 yards out, which is just not what you were seeing in all this season. Because it was Jahmyr Gibbs between the 20 is could get you there in one play, and then Montgomery's getting you in just 2 plays later.
Yeah.
So now it's a little bit different, but I do think that it doesn't change what this offense has been doing all season. Like you just mentioned, it can be the Amon-Ra Brown show, it can be the Jameson Williams show, it can be the Laporta show, it can be the Gibbs show. They have so many playmakers that can do that any given week. I think this is their week. Sorry, 49ers. It's been a tough season. You're not going to make the playoffs. It is what it is. Learn to be a normal team for once in your life, all right? Suffer down here with the rest of us. But that's all the time that we have. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you everyone for listening. Happy holidays. Enjoy the time off from work. Get a lot of sleep. Eat a lot of food. Enjoy the family time. And hopefully get some good gifts.
Yeah, thank you guys for checking this out all season, sticking with us. We hope you are enjoying our picks and winning all of your picks as well. And make sure to check us out, Just Saying Football on YouTube and Spotify. Make sure to check us out, Just Saying Football on Discord. And for all your updates, get them on Instagram at Just Saying with no GWJS. Thank you guys for watching, and Merry Christmas.
Enjoy.